Elia's ward had never planned to stand inside an alien palace. He was a systems engineer from Earth, trained to fix machines, not to walk beneath towering crystal arches or breathe air filtered through living stone. The palace of the Zerathi Empire rose around him like a frozen storm, sharp lines of glowing blue and silver stretching high above his head. Every surface hummed softly, alive with energy older than any human city. Elias kept his hands relaxed at his sides as he walked, even though his heart beat fast. He reminded himself to breathe slowly, the way he had learned during deep space repairs. Panic never helped. Calm thinking saved lives. Two Zerathi guards moved beside him. They were tall and slender, their skin smooth like polished metal, their eyes dark and unreadable. Long ceremonial cloaks flowed behind them as they walked. They did not speak. They never did unless required. Humans were rare here, useful but never trusted. Elias had been brought to the Zerathi homeworld because something had gone wrong with their planetary shield. The shield protected the capital from solar storms and hostile forces. Zerathi scientists had tried everything, but the system resisted their logic-based methods. It adapted, changed, and refused to stabilize. That was where humans came in. Human technology was messy, emotional, and flexible. It didn't always follow perfect rules, but it worked. Elias had spent weeks adjusting the shield, listening to how it responded, treating it less like a machine and more like a living thing. Slowly, it had begun to heal. Now the shield was stable, which meant Elias should have been sent home. Instead, he was walking deeper into the palace. They passed long halls filled with Zerathi nobles. Conversation stopped as Elias walked by. Some stared with open curiosity. Others looked away, disturbed by his presence. A few showed clear dislike. A human this close to royalty was unheard of. At the end of the hall, massive doors opened without a sound. Inside stood Queen Valeth. She sat upon a throne grown from crystal and light, her form elegant and still. Her crown hovered just above her head, made of shifting symbols rather than metal. Her gaze rested on Elias with calm intensity. "Engineer Elias Ward," she said, her voice smooth and powerful, carried clearly through the chamber. "You have served the Empire well." Elias bowed slightly the way he had been taught. "I'm glad the shield is stable, Your Majesty." "It is," the Queen replied. "Yet you remain." Elias chose his words carefully. "I was told you wished to speak with me." "Yes." She studied him for a long moment. Elias felt like a system being scanned layer by layer. The Queen did not look angry. She did not look pleased. She looked thoughtful. "There are disturbances," she said at last. "Unrelated to the shield, you will accompany us." Before Elias could ask what that meant, the Queen rose. The court parted as she walked, and Elias was guided to follow. They moved into a quieter wing of the palace. The lights softened here, warmer, gentler. The sounds changed too. The constant hum of energy faded into something closer to silence. Elias noticed something strange. The servants here seemed nervous. Their movements were quick, their eyes avoiding the Queen's path. A low tension filled the air, like a system running too hot. As they walked, Elias passed a wide doorway made of smooth white stone. Something on the other side of it caught his attention. A sound. It was small, high, curious. A child's voice. Elias slowed before he could stop himself. The guards noticed and stiffened, but the Queen raised a hand. "Let him be," she said quietly. The doorway led to a large open space filled with soft light. Shapes floated gently in the air, glowing toys suspended by invisible fields. The room felt safe, designed to comfort rather than impress. And in the center stood a small Zerathi child. The child was much smaller than the adult Zerathi Elias had seen, with softer features and brighter eyes. It looked toward the doorway, head tilting slightly as if sensing something new. Then the child's eyes locked onto Elias. Everything happened very fast. The child's eyes widened. A look of sudden joy crossed its face. Without hesitation, it ran forward, small feet moving quickly across the smooth floor. Before anyone could react, the child threw its arms around Elia's legs. "Dad," the word echoed through the chamber. Time seemed to stop. Elias froze, his mind completely blank. His hands hovered awkwardly in the air, unsure what to do. He felt the warmth of the child's embrace, the firm grip as if afraid to let go. Behind him, guards raised their weapons. Court officials gasped. Servants backed away in shock. Queen Valith stood perfectly still. The child looked up at Elias, eyes shining. "Dad," it said again, softer this time, pressing closer. Elias swallowed hard. I think there's been a mistake," he said gently, though his voice shook. The child shook its head, clearly unhappy with that answer, and tightened its grip. The queen stepped forward slowly. Her expression had changed. The calm control she always wore had cracked, replaced by something Elias could not name. Surprise, yes, but also something deeper. "Release the human," she commanded, her voice steady but strained. The child ignored her. A caretaker rushed forward, reaching for the child, but the moment her hands touched it, the child cried out sharply. The sound made the air vibrate. Lights flickered. Elias reacted without thinking. He lowered himself to one knee so he was closer to the child's level. "It's okay," he said softly. "No one's going to hurt you." The child's breathing slowed almost instantly. The room went silent. Elias realized then that everyone was staring at him, not with anger but disbelief. The queen raised her hand again, stopping the guards. "Stand down," she said. Slowly, the weapons lowered. "What is your name?" the queen asked the child. The child did not answer. It only looked at Elias. Elias felt a strange tightness in his chest. He did not understand what was happening, but something about the moment felt familiar, like a memory just out of reach. "I've never been here before," Elias said carefully, speaking to the queen. "I swear." "I don't know why the child thinks." "I know," Queen Valith said quietly. She approached, her movements slow and careful, as if not to frighten the child. "The child has never seen you before," she said. "And yet—" She stopped a short distance away. The child glanced at her, then back at Elias, and shook its head again. The queen closed her eyes briefly. "Seal the palace," she said. At once a low alarm sounded. Doors throughout the palace locked. Energy fields activated. Elias' heart dropped. "Your Majesty." "You are not under arrest," she said, opening her eyes. "But you are not leaving." The child finally loosened its grip just enough to climb into Elias' arms, as if it had always belonged there. Elias caught the child instinctively, holding it securely. No one tried to stop him. The queen looked at them both, her gaze heavy with questions. "This changes everything," she said. Elias looked down at the child, who had already begun to relax against him, eyes half closed, safe and calm. He had come to fix a shield. Instead, he had broken the rules of an empire. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet, impossible thought took shape. This was not an accident. The palace stayed sealed. Outside the nursery wing, energy barriers glowed softly, cutting the area off from the rest of the Zirathi capital. Inside, the air felt heavy with questions no one wanted to ask out loud. Servants moved carefully. Guards stood alert but uncertain. Nothing like this had ever happened in the long history of the empire. Elias ward sat on a low, curved seat near the center of the room. The Zirathi child rested against his chest, small hands gripping the front of his jacket as if afraid the world might pull them apart. The child's breathing was slow and steady now, calm in a way that surprised everyone watching. Elias himself was not calm. His thoughts raced in tight circles. He kept asking the same question over and over. How? He had never been here before. He had never met the queen's child. He was human. This made no sense. And yet the child refused to leave him. Queen Valith stood across the room, her posture controlled but her eyes never leaving them. Around her, a small group of advisors and bioscientists whispered urgently, their voices low and tense. "This is not possible," one scientist said. The child has had no human contact. The emotional response is too strong, another replied. It is reacting as if to a bonded guardian. Valith raised a hand. Silence fell immediately. Bring the resonance scanners, she said. And the memory archives. The scientists moved quickly. Elias shifted slightly, worried he might disturb the child, but the small Zerathi only adjusted its grip and pressed closer. Elias felt a strange pull in his chest, a deep instinct to protect, even though his mind still screamed that this was unreal. You are not in danger, Queen Valith said, her voice softer than before, but you must answer truthfully. Elias looked up at her. I will. I don't understand any of this. Neither do we, she replied. The scanners were activated. Soft light passed over Elias and the child, mapping neural signals, emotional patterns, and biological markers. Symbols shifted in the air, data flowing faster than Elias could follow. One of the scientists stiffened. Your Majesty, speak. The child's neural responses are stabilizing in the human's presence. Stress indicators are dropping to baseline levels. Another scientist added, when separated earlier, stress levels spiked dangerously. The child's core energy reacted defensively. Queen Valith's jaw tightened. Meaning the child perceives the human as essential, the scientist said carefully. A murmur spread through the room. Elias swallowed. I would never hurt a child, he said quickly. I don't know why this is happening, but I don't want to cause harm. Valith studied him for a long moment. I believe you. That alone sent shock through the advisors. The Queen turned back to the scientists. Search the archives. Every record from the border conflict 17 cycles ago, especially evacuation logs. The scientists hesitated. Your Majesty, those records are sealed by my command, Valith said, and now opened by it. As the data streamed in, Elias felt a dull ache behind his eyes. Something about the mention of a border conflict stirred a memory. A damaged ship, emergency lights, long hours alone in deep space. He frowned slightly, trying to focus. Images began to form on the hollow display. A small Zerathi vessel drifting near a collapsed trade route, damage from unknown weapons, life support failing. One of the advisors spoke slowly. This ship was declared lost. Elias stared at the image, his breath caught. I know that ship, he said quietly. Every eye turned to him. I was assigned to a salvage patrol years ago, Elias continued. We found a vessel barely holding together, no identification, no weapons online, just a distress signal repeating. The Queen's eyes widened just slightly. I boarded it alone, Elias said. The crew was gone, most of the systems were dead, but there was one life sign. The room felt suddenly smaller. A Zerathi, Elias said, badly injured, unconscious. I didn't even know she was royalty, I just did what I could. The hollow display shifted again. Medical scans appeared, records of emergency repairs done with human tools, human methods. You remained with the vessel, the Queen said slowly. Yes, Elias replied. We couldn't move her safely, so I stabilized the ship and waited for rescue. It took days, maybe longer. I talked a lot, I didn't think she could hear me. Silence pressed down. The Queen's voice was quiet. She was carrying an air. Elias' heart dropped. I didn't know, he said. I swear. I know, Valith said again. One of the scientists leaned closer to the display. The child's emotional imprinting began during that time. Early neural development absorbed the human's presence. Another added, humans use emotional bonding as a survival trait. It appears the child adapted this response. Elias looked down at the child, who had woken slightly and was watching his face with calm curiosity. So, it remembers me? Elias asked. Not as memory, the Queen said, as connection. The advisors erupted into arguments. This bond threatens the purity of the line. A human influence on the heir is unacceptable. This could destabilize the throne. Elias felt anger rise, sharp and sudden. He stood carefully, still holding the child. I didn't choose this, he said, his voice firm. and neither did the kid. The room went quiet again. The queen raised her hand once more. Enough! She stepped closer, her gaze steady. The Zarathi Empire has survived because we adapt. We do not deny reality simply because it challenges tradition. One advisor bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, there are factions who will not accept this. I am aware, Valith said. As if summoned by her words, an alarm pulsed softly, different from the earlier lockdown tone. A guard entered and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, unauthorized movement near the inner halls. Security reports a breach attempt. The Queen's eyes hardened. They move faster than expected. Elias tightened his hold on the child. What's happening? Those who fear change, Valith replied, and would rather break the future than share it. The lights flickered. Somewhere distant, a dull impact echoed through the palace. The child stirred, sensing the shift. Its breathing quickened. Elias reacted instantly, lowering his voice. Hey, it's okay, I'm here. The child calmed again, small fingers curling into his sleeve. Several scientists stared in awe. It responds faster to him than to any calming field, one whispered. The Queen straightened. Engineer Elias Ward, she said formally. Until this threat is resolved, you will remain with the child at all times. Elias nodded without hesitation. Of course. Another impact shook the walls, closer this time. Escort them to the inner garden, the Queen ordered. It is the safest zone. Guards moved quickly, forming a protective circle as Elias was guided through hidden corridors. The palace felt different now, no longer just beautiful, but alive with danger. As they moved, Elias felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. He was a human far from home, holding the heir to an alien empire while enemies closed in. Yet beneath the fear was something else. Resolve. They reached the inner garden, a wide open space filled with bioluminescent plants and flowing energy streams. The ceiling opened to the sky, showing stars far beyond Earth's reach. Elias stood still, taking it in. The child looked up at him and made a soft sound, touching his chest. Yes, Elias whispered, not knowing why, I'm here. Behind them, the palace trembled again. Queen Valith's voice came through the comms, calm but firm. They have breached the outer ring. Hold position. Elias looked down at the child, then out at the stars. He had fixed their shield once. Now, without meaning to, he had become another kind of shield. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would not move. The inner garden glowed softly, its living plants reacting to the tension in the palace. Colors shifted from calm blues to alert golds as distant impacts echoed through the crystal walls. Energy streams slowed, then pulsed, as if the garden itself was listening. Elias Ward stood at the center of it all, holding the Zarathi child close. The child's head rested against his shoulder, small fingers gripping his jacket. Each tremor of the palace made the child tense, but every time Elias spoke softly, the fear faded. Guards formed a tight circle around them. Their faces were focused, but uncertainty showed in their eyes. They had trained to protect the Queen and the Empire, not to witness a human calmly steadying the royal air with nothing but a voice and a steady heartbeat. Queen Valith entered the garden moments later, her presence commanding despite the chaos around them. Her advisors followed, some calm, others clearly shaken. The inner halls are no longer secure, one advisor reported. The extremist faction has overridden several control nodes. They will not reach this place, Valith said firmly. Not while I still rule. Another tremor shook the floor. Cracks of light raced across the walls, then faded as the palace systems adjusted. Elias looked up. How long until they're stopped? Valith met his gaze. Longer than I would like. The child stirred again, sensing the rising danger. Its breathing became uneven. The lights in the garden flickered in response, reacting to the child's emotional state. The scientists watching from a distance exchanged worried looks. The air's resonance is increasing, one whispered. If the stress continues. Elias didn't wait for the sentence to finish. He shifted his stance, grounding himself the way he had learned during long space walks. He slowed his breathing on purpose, deep and steady, letting the rhythm carry into the child. "Hey," he said softly, "listen to me. You're safe. I've got you." The child's small hands relaxed. The garden lights steadied. The scientist's eyes widened. "It's sinking with him." Queen Valith watched closely. "Explain." "The child's ancient ability," the scientist said. "Empathic resonance. It was thought lost. The Zirathi abandoned it generations ago because it made us vulnerable." "Or connected," Elias said quietly. Several advisors bristled at the word, but Valith did not correct him. Another alarm sounded, sharper this time. "They're at the final barrier," a guard reported. The queen turned to Elias. "There may be a moment when I must make a choice that risks everything." Elias held her gaze. "So will I." The ground shook violently. A surge of energy rippled through the garden, sending waves of light outward. The child cried out, not in pain but fear. Without thinking, Elias sat down on the smooth stone floor, pulling the child into his lap. He wrapped his arms around it fully, creating a shield with his own body. "It's okay," he said, voice firm now. "I'm not going anywhere. No matter what happens, I'm here." The words carried weight, not just sound. The garden responded, its light brightening, flowing outward like a calm tide pushing back a storm. Inside the palace systems, something changed. Control panels flickered. Locked doors resisted forced overrides. The palace itself seemed to recognize the comm center forming around the child. "What is happening?" an advisor demanded. The scientist stared at the readings. "The air's resonance is amplifying through emotional stability. The palace recognizes it as a command state." Valith inhaled sharply. "It is choosing him as an anchor." At that moment, the final barrier failed. A group of armed extremists stormed into the outer edge of the garden, their armor dark, their expressions hard. They froze when they saw the scene before them. Not a battlefield. A human sitting on the floor, holding the glowing air of the Empire like a parent protecting a child from a storm. "This is your last warning," one of them shouted. "Step away from the air." Elias looked up slowly. He did not stand. He did not raise his voice. "No," he said. The word was simple, calm, unmoving. "You do not belong here," the extremist leader snarled. Elias tightened his hold slightly as the child trembled. "Neither do you," he replied. "This place was built to protect, not destroy." The extremists raised their weapons. Before they could fire, the palace reacted. Light surged from the garden floor, rising in gentle but unstoppable waves. The extremists were lifted off their feet, weapons falling uselessly from their hands. They were not harmed, only held, suspended by invisible force. The child looked up, eyes glowing softly, not with fear but clarity. The scientist stared in disbelief. "The resonance is absolute." Queen Valith stepped forward. "Stand down," she commanded the extremists. They struggled, but the palace held them firm. "You sought to protect tradition," Valith continued, "but you forgot what made us strong." She looked at Elias and the child. "Connection?" The extremists were disarmed and removed, the palace gently but firmly pushing them into containment fields. The alarms faded. The tremors stopped. Silence returned. Slowly, the garden lights dimmed back to peaceful colors. Elias exhaled, realizing only then how tense his body had been. The child rested fully against him now, calm and warm. Queen Valith approached and knelt, lowering herself to their level. It was a gesture no Zirathi ruler had made in public memory. "My child," she said softly. The child looked at her, then back at Elias, then reached out one small hand toward the queen, inviting her closer. Valith's breath caught. "You have given my heir something we lost," she said to Elias. "A balance between strength and care." Elias shook his head slightly. "I just did what humans do." "And that," Valith said, "is exactly why it worked." She stood and turned to the gathered court, her voice carrying through the garden and beyond, broadcast across the palace. "Let it be known," she declared, that Elia's ward of Earth is recognized as guardian of the air, not by blood but by bond. This role is honored, protected, and permanent. Gasps spread through the watching Zerathi. Elias blinked. Your Majesty. You saved more than a life, Valeth said. You showed us a future. The child shifted, looking up at Elias again, eyes bright and trusting. Dad, it said softly. This time no one raised a weapon. Elias felt something settle inside him, a quiet acceptance. He did not correct the word. He simply held the child and looked up at the alien sky above the garden. Far across the galaxy, news spread quickly. Humans watched in disbelief as images showed a single human standing beside an alien queen, holding the future of an empire. They did not see a conqueror. They saw something far more powerful, a human who stayed. And in that moment the galaxy learned what humanity truly brought to the stars. Not fear, not force, but the courage to care even when the universe said it should not matter. And that changed everything.